We're talking about the gun control measures that some people are recommending in the wake of the shooting at the Parkland High School. So isn't it interesting? The Second Amendment is designed to prevent tyranny by government. Make sure that in the event that the American people go crazy and elect a Hitler, and Hitler decides to seize power, we can do something about it. You don't think a bunch of Americans, millions of Americans with handguns can't hold off the government? Are you kidding me? We way outnumber them. One of the things Hitler did was to restrict the ownership of guns in the hands of Jews. You don't think it could happen? I think a whole bunch of people in Germany never thought it could happen. But people on the left have referred to President Trump many, many times as a dictator, as a tyrant, likened him to Adolf Hitler. If you're serious, if you believe that, why in the world would you want any kind of infringement at all on the very mechanism designed to make sure that this would-be Hitler cannot take control? Why would you do that? Are you serious? If you're serious, would you simultaneously want to make sure that Americans cannot defend themselves against this Hitler? Unless you're really not serious and you're just saying it for political purposes. I'm not sure which is more disgusting, whether you believe it or whether you don't believe it. But if you do, I really do not understand why in the world you want to curtail the Second Amendment, which is designed to prevent the very thing from happening that you claim has happened, which is that the American people have elected a dictator. What part of shall not be infringed don't you understand? What part of the Militia Act have you not read that says all males ages 17 to 45, able-bodied, are part of the militia? And you keep asking why it is a 19-year-old can get a firearm? That's why. I don't understand people urging that we ban an entire category of firearms, if not firearms altogether, because one may be used in a crime or some may be used in a crime, but the same logic does not apply to illegal aliens, several of whom have committed violent crimes, you know. You have some people on the left urging laws so that people could be committed against their will, involuntarily, even when they're not judged by a court to be of danger to himself or to others, or herself or to others. When it was the ACLU that in the 70s led the charge to put pressure on mental hospitals to release patients that they believe were involuntarily committed. Bruce Ennis, the head of the New York chapter of the ACLU, said this in 1974, quote, "My personal goal is either to abolish involuntary commitment or to set up so many procedural roadblocks and hurdles that it will be difficult, if not impossible, for the state to commit people against their will," close quote. Now, I'm not saying he's wrong. What I'm saying is this is on the left. And people on the left are now saying that we want laws so that people could be involuntarily committed, when it was people on the left that wanted those laws to go away. Are you kidding me? We're investigating Trump for collusion because we believe that the Russians meddled in our election. But the very same people who are making this claim have no interest whatsoever in voter ID to make sure that our election have voter integrity. So let's have all this time and spend all this money investigating Russian meddling, but let's not spend any money making sure that people who show up at the voting booth are in fact the people who say they are and that they're legally eligible to vote. I'm a little confused. Tom Friedman is a columnist with the New York Times. He's one of many who says that the Republicans have sold their soul to the NRA. Implication, all you have to do is write somebody a check and they'll do what you tell them. Never mind, study after study after study shows it's not true. The average politician votes the way he or she votes because that's the way his or her party wants. That's the way he perceives or she perceives their constituents to want, or because it's consistent with the politician's own individual ideology. It's been studied. And think about it. If that weren't the case, why would you even bother writing a check to the Republicans since they already support the NRAs and JED? Now, why don't you write the check to Adam Schiff? Why don't you write a check to Nancy Pelosi? Why don't you write a check to the Congressional Black Caucus? If all you have to do is write a check. Once Willie Brown, who used to be arguably the most powerful man in California for about 15 years, he used to be the Speaker of the Assembly here in California. We have two chambers, Assembly and Senate. And Willie Brown was the Speaker for some 15 years. And he was on the Bill Maher show, the politically incorrect show on ABC. At the time, people who took money from tobacco companies were being hammered because tobacco was then perceived to be a scheme to cheat Americans and to inflict cancer on a bunch of people. And so the tobacco companies were really, really on the defense in those days. And Bill Maher turns to Willie Brown and says, now, you've taken money from tobacco companies. Aren't you in a pickle? And Willie Brown said, why? And Bill Maher said, well, because you're taking money from tobacco companies. And Willie Brown said, and I quote, if you can't take people's money and screw them, you have no business being in the business, end of quote. So here is a Democrat telling you that I'll take your money, but I'm ultimately going to do what I think I should do anyway. That's why it's always difficult to prove a quid pro quo whenever these politicians are investigated for taking money, because you have to prove that but for the money, they would not have voted the way they voted. Sold their soul to the NRA.
Well, it's one party has completely sold their soul to them. That's what the Republican Party has done. And there's only one way to defeat them. I go back to where I started. Don't tweet about it. Don't Facebook post about it. Register to vote. Run for office. Help someone run for office. Fund for someone running for office. Help someone get to the voting booth. You got to take power. They have power. They're not winning in the chat room. They're winning in the cloakroom, okay? They're not on Facebook. They're in people's face. Get out of Facebook. Get in their face in the only way that counts, and that's by winning elections and electing people for sane gun laws.
And here is a Democratic Florida representative urging a complete ban on the AR-15.
Right now, Wolf, the real issue is how do we get these AR-15s out of the hand of these kids? And how do we get the AR-15s off the streets? And my solution at this particular moment, while we're discussing exactly what needs to be done, is to issue a moratorium on the sales of AR-15s. Now, as it relates to having armed police officers at the school, I agree with the sheriff from Broward County that is not the long-term answer, and we should be looking at the real issue here, from Las Vegas to Pulse to here at Stoneman Douglas. The reality of it is the one common factor is the AR-15. Let's have a discussion about either banning it completely and/or issuing a moratorium until we can somehow come to a conclusion that will protect our kids who are both in the classrooms and out of the classrooms.
I think long guns of all types are used in about 3% of gun crimes. I have no idea what percentage of these long arms are AR-15s. I suspect probably about 1%. What about the other 99%? We ban this one because it's a semi-automatic weapon that's a long gun. Why shouldn't we ban other long guns that are semi-automatic weapons? And why should they be restricted just to long guns? Why not other semi-automatic weapons that are handguns? That's their objective. Ultimately, their objective is a complete and total ban, a repeal of the Second Amendment. So many of them will tell you that. Put a couple of drinks in them and then they'll tell you that. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Kirsten Power selects making bullets travel slower might save lives. And John in Galesburg, Illinois, 16-year-old student, says his high school wants to stage a walkout. John, you're up first. Don't leave town. 888-971-SAGE. I am Larry Elder.
Larry Elder.